Your Honor, just kind of a request, I don't know if it's possible, but given how yesterday afternoon kind of came down with all the different visions on the screen and video, I was just, maybe I'm overly concerned with perception that the jury may have had with my comments.
I tried to rescue you.
But not in front of the jury. So,
No, I think it was in front of the jury when
I don't recall that part, but anyway, I don't recall. But anyway, what I was going to
I think what you're seeing is an artifact that's on the screen, but it isn't on this one.
But I didn't have that artifact in front of me.
I understand that.
Yeah, and the jury doesn't know that part. So what I was going to ask,
Okay.
if you're willing to do it, is to explain to the jury there was an IT issue at nobody's fault, where you were seeing and the witness was seeing something different from what we were seeing, and hence the confusion. That's all I'm asking. So.
I don't have a problem doing that. And as I say, that came up when, at least for me, it came up when Mr. Frederick was on the stand, and I asked him something about all this, the red stuff that's on the, and he just kind of,
Right.
so he knew because he could see it. But he also knew it was an artifact because he's a video guy.
Right, and when you said art, I knew what you were talking about, but I wasn't seeing the artifact.
Sure, I get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't mind doing that. My computer's still updating. I'm now at 18%, it says. Well, maybe it'll be, how's yours done? You started ahead of me. 95. Well, by the time you get back, yours should be done, and maybe mine will be there too. So, I see Mr. Cowden is here, so we can get started with him after the jury arrives. Thank you. Of course, the word artifact, I think, is...
Well, I was an archaeology major, so
You knew what
it
that
means
is.
something different to me, but we have new screens now, is that right?
I don't think so.
Well, we do not have new screens.
Brand new cable.
Oh.
A new
Should we do a
tape?
trial run?
Huh?
Should we do a trial run?
Is there any different?
I'm not seeing it on this video now.
Yeah, there's no artifact.
Sorry. It doesn't matter. It's too late now, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went in somebody else. Dixie cups don't get short.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Please be seated. Okay, before we resume, I wanted to clear up an issue that we had sort of at the end of the day. You may remember there was an issue of where Mr. Fricke was asking Mr. Cowden about this red thing that was being seen on the screen. And I said, I think that's just an artifact of the computers and so on. And he's looking at me baffled, and so we got it sorted out that indeed what was happening is that on the there was this kind of weird red sort of lining of various things, and that's not part of the original thing, but it was probably a product of the monitor itself. But it wasn't showing on Mr. Fricke's monitor, so he didn't know what we were talking about. So when Mr. Cowden was saying there was all this red stuff wasn't in my video, like it was changed in some way, of course he's thinking, the video's been changed in some way? And so he's asking these questions about it. I tried to explain it to him, it's just this artifact of the screen, and he's looking at me baffled because he hasn't seen what I'm seeing and what Mr. Cowden is seeing. So just a misunderstanding there, and not anybody trying to pull anything on anybody. So I think that the IT folks have tweaked these monitors, so hopefully that problem won't appear. You may remember that I even asked Mr. Frederick at one point something about a red thing on the screen, and I think he kind of explained that that's not really there, kind of thing. And I'm not sure if anybody else understood what we were talking about, because Mr. Frederick could see it and I could see it, but we were the only ones evidently who could. It was the same thing that we saw yesterday at Mr. Cowden's time on the stand. So hopefully that explains all of that, and hopefully that will not, that little sort of technical glitch will not reappear. So with that, Mr. Liu, you may resume your direct examination when you're ready.
Thank you, Auditor. Mr. Cowden, good morning.
Good morning.
Before we broke yesterday, we were just about to play the videotape that you took that night. And during your testimony, you looked at your monitor and you did indicate that it does look strange, looked like it had altered. And the judge has explained it was some sort of an artifact. I'm going to have that video play for you again and see if you recognize that video, whether you recognize this video you took that night.
Understood. Thank you. This looks like the original copy I took.
Okay, without the red artifact?
Yes, completely unaltered, yes.
And I believe Exhibit 19 has been omitted, so I will, state moves to publish.
Proceed.
So, Mr. Cowan, that is a video you took that night?
Yes.
And you stopped recording as you turned onto 96th Street?
Yes.
All right. And there's no sound on the audio. Do you know why that is?
It's a bit of a long story I explained before, but basically I lost the video, had to retrieve it from a friend, and the friend only recorded the video and not the audio.
Mr. Cowan, did you see Mr. Ellis chase any officers into the intersection?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Ellis pick up an officer into the air and throw him onto the ground?
No.
Sustained.
And did you ever see Mr. Ellis in the middle of the intersection?
From what I believe the middle of the intersection to be, it was only when he was with the officers in the front of the car.
You testified that you had reached out to Mr. Bible at some point after seeing a newspaper article about Mr. Ellis's death. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you subsequently send, during your interviews with various parties in this case, did you send the newspaper article to the state?
I do not recall.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 840. Mr. Cowan, does 840 look familiar to you?
Yes.
And what is 840?
That would be the newspaper that led me to contacting James Bible.
Okay. And is this the photo that you sent to the state with regard to the article?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. If you go to the third page of the exhibit, is there a date on that newspaper article?
Yes, Sunday, June 7th, 2020.
And did you reach out to Mr. Bible shortly thereafter?
I believe within 24 hours or so, yes.
Mr. Cowden, I notice you do have surgery to your right eye. Are you comfortable in talking about that?
Of course.
Okay. Can you tell us about that?
Basically, I was just born with a bad eye, but my left eye can see perfectly. Don't need glasses or any corrective lenses or anything like that. I just can't see out of the right side.
And that occurred when you were a child?
Yes.
And you can see, how's your vision at night?
I would say as perfect as a two-eyed man, but I wouldn't know.
Mr. Cowden, did you post your video to any social media outlets?
I do recall doing that once.
Okay. Where did you post it?
That would be on the Tacoma's.
Sustained.
Did you also share your video with the Tacoma Action Collective?
Sustained.
Mr. Cowden, prior to March 3rd, 2020, have you ever met Sarah McDowell?
In passing, yes.
Prior to the night of the incident, have you ever met her?
No.
Okay. Since then, have you ever had contact with her or met her?
No.
Have you seen her in passing?
Yes, it was actually with my interview with the State Patrol. I believe as I was leaving, she was going in for an interview after me.
Okay. Did you ever have any conversations with her? Have you ever texted her or talked to her on the phone?
I believe it was just a few words of dialogue on my part. I simply said, good luck.
So you've never met her before the incident?
No.
No conversations afterward besides that exchange?
No.
Have you ever met Keon Lowry?
No.
Do you know who he is?
Unfortunately not, no.
Have you ever met Ayanna White?
No.
And did you know Mr. Ellis prior to this incident?
No.
Do you know any of the officers involved in this case?
No.
If I could have one more now. Mr. Cowden, when I asked you the question about whether Mr. Ellis, you saw Mr. Ellis in the middle intersection, did you ever see him out in the middle of the intersection of 96 and Ainsworth?
I'll permit this.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question or how to answer it properly. The only way I can explain it is the only time I saw him in the middle of the intersection was in the video that we just showed. That was the closest I saw him in the intersection.
In front of the patrol car?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, state offers 840.
I'm sorry, which one? I'm going to object to that article.
Which was the article that was seen?
Correct, Your Honor.
It was just done to refresh his recollection, really, wasn't it? You wanted a substantive evidence, Mr. Liu? Mr. Liu?
I'll withdraw the request, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, you withdrawing 840? All right. So you've concluded your examination?
Bill for the question. Thank you, Your Honor.
Great. Mr. Fricky.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Cowen.
Good morning.
You had an opportunity to meet some time ago, is that correct?
I believe so.
And that was at an interview where a number of people were present, including
Yes.
the AG and the associates over here, right?
Yes.
And obviously you appeared for that, and you were questioned by mainly the defense attorneys at that interview, right?
I believe so, yes.
Throughout the course of this case, is it fair to say, at least as far as some type of formal interview, you were interviewed on 4 or 5 occasions?
Yes.
And is it fair to say the first one, if you recall, was done on October 5th, 2020?
Not sure about the date, no.
Would you need to look at the reports of the interviews to refresh your recollection, number one, as to the dates?
For the dates, yes.
Okay. Here, a lot of binders up here. Skip one? I think it's in there. Let's see. So I'm going to hand you this, if I may approach, Your Honor.
Sure.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'll put this in front of you.
Of course.
I think it's going to be, there's 8:15 to 8:08. I think you're going to go to 8:36 first.
836.
You have that in front of you?
It's empty between 836 and 837.
Well, maybe they took them out of there. No, I think that's exactly what happened. So we'll just leave that here, and I'm going to give you these three, because I'm going to go through all of them. So I'm handing you, the first one there is 836. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Does that indicate the interview date of October 5th, 2020?
It says September 22nd, 2020.
September 22nd, 2020?
Yes, for Article 836. That's what I'm seeing here.
Okay. And then it was up by Detective Rue,
Yes, Jeffrey Rue.
and he was the only one present at that interview?
There were two people present. I'm not sure the other name.
Okay. Male or female?
Male.
Okay. And then another interview was done on March 8th, 2021. Do you recall that interview?
I'm not sure which one it was, no.
And if I can refer you to Exhibit 838, which I think is in front of you as well.
I am missing that one.
You're missing that one. Check the binder on that one. They have it out of there too.
So she did not put it back in the
No,
binder.
that's
So I
fine.
left them where
Can you
they.
pull up 838 or Sean? And show it to him on the screen, just to him. And the judge, of course. Sometimes we have hiccups, so.
I understand.
I may approach with my copy of it, not mark, Your Honor, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah, show it to council.
Oh, it's on the screen now? Okay. You see that on the screen?
Yes.
Does that refresh your recollection as to the date of that interview?
Yes, March 31st, 2021.
And when you say March 31st, that's actually the date prepared. Do you see that?
Oh, I see there indeed.
Yeah. And the date of the actual interview is March 8th. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And at that interview, present was Mr. Liu, who just examined you on the stand, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Eakes?
I'm not sure.
Refresh your recollection by looking at that first paragraph there?
Well, I mean, do you want me to go through my recollection or just read you the names on the paper?
Well, what, you don't recall who was there, is that
No.
correct?
Out of the
That
5
will refresh
interviews.
your recollection, however, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So read that to yourself then.
Okay.
And would you agree Ms. Eakes was there?
I would now, yes.
Mr. Liu?
Yes.
Okay. And the author of the interview, the report was Detective Heisman, is that right? And he's at the top there.
Yes.
And do you recall anyone else being there at that interview?
It says the Tacoma office of the AGO was there. I know there were several other members there, but I don't know their names or faces.
And Mr. Bible was there, correct?
Correct.
And the next interview you did, do you recall it being on May 25th of 2021?
I do not recall the date, no.
Okay. If you have 837 in front of you, exhibit 837, would that help you refresh your recollection?
Just seems like an interview I did, yeah.
So, you agree, and that was with Mr. Bible alone, correct?
Yes.
And he videotaped and audio taped that interview, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Recall that? Okay. And then subsequent to that, you were contacted by,
By the way, though, as I'm looking at this document, it doesn't say that it was done on May 25th, 2021. It says that's when it was transcribed, I think. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
Correct.
But it was done on some other date, presumably before that.
double check that.
Are we looking at the same page with unknown date of recording at the top?
That's right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Actually, what I guess, the title page indicates May 25th, 2021, right?
It indicates that, yes.
Yeah. What it also,
It's giving the wrong
Hold
No,
on. Let him finish. Let him finish.
it also indicates now in reflection here, is that it's an unknown date of the recording, correct?
Correct.
So I guess, do you recall when the recording was?
No.
Okay. But certainly, obviously, it would have been before it was transcribed. We can agree with that, can we?
Yes.
And then subsequent to that time, you had other contacts with various people in relation to this case, right?
Yes.
Do you recall the person who interviewed you in March, Detective Heisman?
Not quite, no. I don't recall him too well.
Do you recall anyone from the AG's office, investigators or otherwise, contacting you throughout the investigation of this case?
I remember the people that are present here today. The other faces I don't remember.
And do you recall people trying to get information regarding who had information on the video that you had posted?
Yes.
And that friend was a friend of yours, Sipes?
Yes.
Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
And at least initially you refused to give him that information, is that fair to say?
Out of respect of Sipes' own privacy, yes.
Okay. And how long did you eventually give him the contact information?
Who? Sipes or the attorney?
The attorney, well, either the attorneys or whoever's working for the attorneys, give it to them.
I remember giving Sipes' number out, but I told the person I was giving the number to, don't get your hopes up. He might not be willing to do anything.
Okay. And had you talked to Sipes about that?
Not quite, no.
Okay. Now, yesterday you testified, I think you gave that video to, if I'm not mistaken, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, 8 to 10 friends.
Yes.
Okay. Who are those people?
I don't recall.
You don't recall their names?
No.
So the only one you recall giving the information to is Mr. Sipes.
Yes.
And you just testified this morning that the phone that you used to record the video actually recorded audio initially. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And did you yourself listen to the audio prior to it being destroyed?
Yes.
You don't recall at this time what was on the audio?
It was mainly just my car radio is what I heard.
Okay. And did you hear any words on that audio?
No.
Okay. Now that subsequently disappeared and your phone was apparently damaged, right?
The phone was damaged that was recording?
I'm asking you.
Yes.
Okay. And the phone was damaged, do you remember when it was damaged?
After I took the video.
Was it before you met Mr. Bible?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And do you know if Bible actually saw the phone?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now, so when you say you do not know, are you saying he may have or may not have, or are you saying he did not?
I don't recall.
Okay, that's fine. And I think you've indicated throughout the interviews that your best recollections are from the first interview you gave, is that right?
That would make sense, yes.
And that, as indicated earlier, was with Detective Brew in October of 2020, correct?
Your Honor, I object that mistakes.
September of 2020, I strike that.
Can you
That's
can you
not
rephrase?
Mr. Liu's problem, to be honest with you, but that's a matter of opinion, I suppose, at this point.
That's an incorrect opinion, but
Well, isn't that right? I don't know. Was your first interview in October of 2020?
I do not know. I don't recall.
Well, let me go. Do you have that exhibit 836 in front of you again?
Yes.
Good. And it indicates, there's actually 2 dates on that when you look at it, isn't it?
Yes.
And the first date, and this was a recorded interview, correct?
I don't recall.
Okay. This is a transcript, at least in front of you, correct?
I assume it'd be recorded then, yes.
Yeah. And then on the first date on the top there, or close to the top, it says September 22nd, 2020, right?
Yes.
But in the first paragraph of the transcript, it says the date is October 5th, 2020. Correct?
Yes.
Hence the confusion. Right.
Right.
So, and it appears perhaps that Detective Rue himself perhaps was transcribing this recording that he made on October 5th from September 22nd. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes.
Okay. Now you, prior to that interview, were in contact with Mr. Bible, is that correct?
Yes.
And I think yesterday you had indicated that Mr. Bible was giving you, at least at times, free legal advice, correct?
Correct.
And that was to Mr. Liu's question. And that free legal advice, that included what to do in the context of people contact you in this case, is that right?
Could you repeat that?
That free legal advice that he was giving you included what to do in relation to people who are part of this case contacting you.
Yes.
Right? For interviews, in essence.
Yes.
And you sought advice from Mr. Bible in that regard as to what to do, correct?
Yes.
What other advice was he giving you?
That would be pretty much it. Just him advising me on what I'm legally obligated to do for both parties if I had to do the interviews. All 5 interviews I went to were willing. But other than that, he didn't give me much advice.
Okay, and when's the last time you received advice from him?
It was actually a couple interviews ago, before my last 2 interviews with the state attorney and then the defense.
And I'm not sure what you mean by a couple interviews ago. What are your...
Exactly 2 interviews.
Okay, so when's the last time you spoke to Mr. Bible, either by text, email, or over the phone?
Overall forms of communication, I don't know the exact date or time.
Yeah. Time frame?
Definitely about 6 months or so.
Okay, so this year.
Yes.
Okay. And was that in the context of giving other interviews?
Yes.
I mean, those, of course, the defense hasn't talked to you in the last 6 months, correct?
Don't believe so, no.
So the interviews that you were talking to him in relation to in the last 6 months were either with the state or Mr. Bible, is that fair to say?
It would be, yes.
Okay. How many interviews since, other than we previously discussed here a moment ago, have you had with the state?
I have had 0.
I'm sorry?
I've had 0 interviews since the last one with defense.
Okay. And so who were you talking to in the last 6 months?
I'm unsure of the question.
Who have you spoken to other than Mr. Bible in the last 6 months?
About the case?
Yes.
I do not recall.
Okay. But you're saying, now you're saying it's not the AGs, right?
Oh, they would be the last people I've talked to, yes. They set up the time for the court, then the subpoena.
Okay. Now, when you talk to Mr. Bible, in October, in September of 2020, you sought advice as to how to handle this interview.
Your Honor, again, I object to mischaracterizing when he spoke to Mr. Bible. Mr. Cowen testified.
Object to the speaking objection.
I understand your point, Mr. Liu. He can rescue himself if he has to, or if he needs to, or if you're right and that's not the right time frame. Continue with your question.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you were talking to Mr. Bible in 2020, all right? And again, you earlier indicated, based on the newspaper article, the first time you would have reached out was sometime in June of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And you talked to his staff person initially, right?
Yes.
And then Mr. Bible got back to you from another number that you were unaware of.
Yes.
And then you started having conversations with him, both by phone and by text, is that right?
Yes.
And that continued on into the fall of 2020, right?
Yes.
And that continued in the context of that interview that was done on September 22nd, 2020, right?
I believe so, yes.
And in the context of that interview, you and this is where, if we could show him exhibit number 2541, and just for the witness. 2541, correct. I want to make sure what shows up for you is showing up here. See that?
Yes.
That's a text string. Well, can you identify what that is?
It's a text between me and James Bible. I believe this is from James Bible's point of view.
And, well, I mean, you're conversing with him, correct?
Yes.
And so he's communicating with you, you're responding, and vice versa.
Yes.
And that starts on June 12th of 2020, right?
I'm unsure.
That continues on through that text string. If you can bring them to the very last page. I'm sorry. You should have 6.
What was being displayed was not the first text, but the last
I may approach your
text. It's my understanding of what's being said here.
May I approach just to take a look?
Or if she could put it back to where it was,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the judge. Didn't hear you.
put it back to where it was so Mr. Fricky knows what we're talking about.
Right.
No, I mean, you had the last page up. Show the last page.
May I look around here, Your Honor?
Now you can take a look at what it is.
Okay.
This is what Mr. Cowden was looking at when you were
Right.
asking the question.
Page
Sorry
9
about-
of 9.
Okay, thank you. So,
When you asked him about a June date, that was not appearing on
all
the
right,
screen.
okay. So that's what's the dates on that last page?
February 7th, not sure of the year.
Okay. If you can go all the way forward to the first page. All right. You see that page?
Yes.
Thank you. And that indicates the beginning, at least on this string, of June 12th, 2020, right?
Yes.
And that would have been in the context of that newspaper article where you found out about Mr. Bible, correct?
Yes.
And then obviously you had given him at least his staff information for how he could get a hold of you.
Yes, I believe I left my number.
And as indicated there, he indicates, he identifies who he is.
Yes.
Okay. Now that continues on, those text messages, if you go to the third page. You have that in front of you, beginning on the top with, I will request.
Page 3 of 9, yes.
I'm sorry,
The page 3,
yes.
yes.
That's at the top. And if you look in the middle there, you guys had a discussion of having days off, right?
Yes, he was trying to work around my schedule, I believe.
For the interview with Detective Rue, is that right?
I believe that's the right interview, yes.
And that first notation from you, what's the date of that?
October 1st, 2020,
At 5:53 p.m.?
yes.
Okay. And then you talk about in there, let me know the plan and how I should prepare, correct?
Yes,
You're referring to Mr. Bible, right?
yes,
And the plan is related to the interview coming up by Detective Rue, right?
yes.
And so you had a discussion with him. Did you have an oral discussion after that?
After the interview or the
No,
text?
prior to the interview.
Ah.
I think he means after this text message.
Both, actually, after that text and prior to the interview.
Well, then it's a compound question.
Yeah, I'm confused what the question is.
Did you have a discussion with him after this text message on October 1st, 2020?
Yes, on October 5th on the next text messages down.
Okay? And that's Mr. Bible's response to you.
Yes,
Hold on a second. He was asking you, after October 1st, not about the text message exchange, did you have any other oral communication with Mr. Bible? That was what the question was.
I don't recall.
Okay.
Thank you, Your
May
Honor.
or may not have.
Yeah, I don't recall.
Okay. And then anyway, as far as the text messages go, the next one, which is Mr. Bible responding to you, is on October 5th, correct?
Yes,
And confirming that the interview with Detective Rue was going to be on that very day at 4:30 p.m., correct?
yes,
Okay. And then you went to the interview. right?
yes.
And I think you said it was at the State Patrol office somewhere in Tacoma.
Somewhere in Tacoma.
Okay. It's not important where, but in this vicinity, right?
Yes,
And Detective Rue was there, obviously doing the interview,
yes,
and Mr. Bible was there.
yes. As well as the other adult male.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As well as the other
The
adult
other
male.
that you mentioned. And so this, other than with Mr. Bible, was this the very first interview that you had done with anyone from the investigating agencies?
Besides James Bible's first interview, yes,
Okay.
you're correct.
And afterwards, were you disappointed in your performance during that interview?
What do you mean?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Were you disappointed?
Well, I'm disappointed in myself every day, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Sure.
Okay. And you apologized to Mr. Bible, right?
I don't recall.
If you can look at it, we're on the same page, the very bottom of that.
Yes.
Refresh your recollection.
Yes, I do.
It does indicate that you said to Mr. Bible, I apologize if I said anything disappointing. I tried my best. You see that?
Yes.
And you said that. That's from you, right?
Yes, that's for me.
Okay. And then you said it threw me off and how they brought up the social media.
Can you go to the next page for me?
Not quite there yet.
Oh, okay. No problem.
But we will get there. And so the very bottom there on the same page, the very last thing, it says, I tried my best, it threw me off how they brought up social media.
Yes.
Well, it says update social, and then go to page
Okay.
4. Okay. What social media were they,
Hold on.
what are you referring to?
We're not there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. On page 4.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think we're there now.
Can you repeat the question?
What social media were you referring to that they brought up?
I believe it was a Reddit post that I made.
Okay. And apparently, from your text, you said you had brought up a lot of hate, is that right? In that post?
Yes, I've said it had a lot of hate in the comments due to a lack of context.
And the hate that you're referring to is what you were expressing, is that right?
No, there was a lot of hate in the comments. There was other people.
Comments to your
Yes.
posting. Oh, got it. Okay. All right. Now you never talked to Detective Rue again, right?
I don't believe so, no.
And in fact, he had requested, or someone from prior to the interview with the AGs, they had requested to do another interview, right?
I don't recall.
And do you recall seeking advice from Mr. Bible, who indicated you're not required to do a second interview?
I don't recall, no.
Yeah. Well, I think we're good now. So as this investigation went on, you again interviewed with the AGs. And
Yes.
your statement started to evolve a little bit. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
But you were consistent, were you not, during the course of the interviews, whether it was with Mr. Rue or Detective Rue, the AGs, our office, here yesterday, that your best recollection was at the beginning.
Yes.
And a lot of what you had to testify to is based on the video that you prepared.
Of course.
That was the best evidence. Is that right?
Believe so.
Okay, now, yesterday you testified your location, or the location of the police card. If we could bring up exhibit number 151E, which has already been admitted, take a look at that. And by the way, before that comes up, would you agree that after you saw the police officers get out of their car, that car never moved? Is that correct?
I don't believe it so.
I mean, certainly when you were there, it never moved.
It never moved when they got out of the car.
Correct. And so, on 151E here, if you see that on the screen there, now this was just done yesterday when Mr. Lou was questioning you. The big circle is where you have, and the big circle on the T there is where you have the vehicle located, right?
Yes.
And the vehicle being the police car. Correct?
Yes. I remember I wanted it somewhere else because I remember saying that the house was a wall to outline the vehicle. But it seems like that big red circle on the T is more like in the driveway, if that makes sense.
You think it's further,
I think it's in the middle of the intersection.
that it should be moved to the middle?
No, I believe it should be moved more towards the right.
Okay. And how far to the right are you now saying?
I would say exactly parallel to the red circle, which I believe is what is indicating Manny.
Well, I didn't indicate anything, but you indicated that was Manny, right? And you didn't do the actual drawing.
But yes, that's where,
And then the circle was also based on your testimony yesterday.
yes.
And so your further testimony was that you were able to see that vehicle as you were driving up the street, right?
Yes.
And if we can put up 151 D. When you look down there, I think you indicated where you were parked. Is that still accurate?
Yes.
And obviously, this photo, which is, I believe, obviously not taken on the night of March 3rd, the daytime photo.
Right.
And the car turning left towards you or in your path wasn't present on that evening, fair to say.
Of course.
And nor the ones, nor the other vehicle, which looks like some type of pickup with some type of trailer, that wasn't there.
Right. Photo
The
from.
circle indicates where you were parked, right?
Yes.
And you indicated yesterday that you were able to see the police vehicle further down from where you parked, right?
Yes, as I was approaching the intersection.
How close were you to the intersection when you were able to see the police car in the middle of the road up there?
I can't recall, but that was quite close. I'm not sure how to describe the distance.
Okay. Now, did you have the green light or red light at that time?
I remember going through both, so I don't recall exactly which one was there at the start.
Okay. Well, do you recall originally when you gave the interview with Detective Rue that you had a green light?
Detective Rue was the first one besides James Bible, correct? That was the.
Based on your
Yeah,
testimony,
I don't
that's
recall what I
also-
said to him.
Okay, would it refresh your recollection to look at the transcript? And that again is exhibit number 836. Actually, like that. I'm gonna go to And there was a second interview, which is interview number, or exhibit number 838. And I apologize for that.
You said 8:38?
I did know, I did say that.
Yes.
You have that in front of you?
Yes, sir.
And again, you don't recall, you need to refresh your recollection as to what you told. At that time, Mr. Loon, Ms. Eakes, Heitzman, and Bible, right?
Right.
And if you can turn to page 1 of that interview. You have that in front of you?
Yes.
If you look at the second paragraph, that time, you say, you see that in front of you? You read that to yourself?
Yes.
That time you say, do you not, that the officers would have had a green light, is that right?
Yes.
Meaning you had the red light. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, during that time, you indicate, well, actually, if you go to page 3 of that report, you go to lines 23 to 25.
You said page 3?
Yep.
I only have a 1 or 2 here.
Okay. So we'll go back. We'll go to the Bible interview now, which is exhibit number 837. You have that in front of you?
Yes.
And that's the one, again, with Bible alone, which we don't know when it was done, right?
Correct.
And if you go to page three of that report, you have that in front of you now?
Yes.
And if you go down to lines 23 to 25, you have that?
Yes.
That refresh your recollection is what you told Mr. Bible?
Yes.
And at that time, you then said you had the green light, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which meant the officers had the red light.
Correct.
And do you recall which it is, red or green for you and the officers?
I don't recall now, no.
Okay. And that's one thing that's changed throughout the various interviews during this case, is that right?
It seems that way, yes.
And so when you were doing the testimony yesterday, you indicated that well, let me ask you this. Did you actually see Mr. Ellis get hit by the car door?
I This is what I assumed happened, just because I saw him falling as I saw the car door open.
Okay. But he wasn't always on the ground, correct?
No, he was well, he fell to the ground, and the only time I saw him off the ground was when he was trying to get back up, yes.
Okay. Then he tried to run away, correct?
He was walking away, more walking as he was trying to get back up.
Okay. If you have that same interview in front of you, exhibit number 837, if you turn to page 7. You have that in front of you?
Yes, sir.
You have lines 1 through 3.
Yes.
That refresh your recollection of what you told Mr. Bible?
Yes.
You said he was trying to run away, right? Mr. Ellis was?
Yes.
And then Mr. Bible, after you say that, prompts you, well, are you sure of that, right? Basically.
Yes.
And he said, well, I'm not sure, in essence, right?
Yes.
And I think during that, our interview of you, you indicated that, Mr. Bible had different motivations than you did in getting information, right?
What do you mean?
Well, that's why I'm going to ask you what you meant by that.
I'm confused on that. You're asking what I believe Bible's motivations were?
If you knew what his motivations were,
No.
do you think his motivations were different from yours?
I wouldn't know because I don't really know
Okay.
what his motivations were.
So they end up in the front of the car, right?
Right.
You're not sure 100% if the car door hit him or not.
Correct.
You're not sure today whether Mr. Ellis got up and was running or not.
Correct.
But you do agree when you saw them, when you actually saw him, meaning Mr. Ellis, his entire body was in front of the car in the middle of the intersection, correct?
Yes.
And was he up or down initially when you saw him in front of the car in the intersection?
I don't recall.
Okay. And do you recall indicating that you don't recall how he ended up going to the ground?
Yeah, I do not recall.
You do not recall. And for instance, you could recall if he slipped, was pushed, fell, or otherwise. Fair to say?
I do not recall at this moment.
Okay. Is it something you think, and you have no independent recollection of what you're saying, right?
No.
When they went in front of the car, where in relation to the front of the car were they initially positioned?
Could you repeat that question?
Let me make, okay, so when I say we're all getting the same page. The front of the car, I'm talking, as you're looking, if you were looking at the vehicle straight on, you'd see the windshield.
Right.
In the bumper.
Okay.
So my question is, when they went to the front of the car, if you were looking at the vehicle, were they more towards the driver's side or the passenger side?
That's the one problem with my vision, sir, is I don't have good depth perception, so I would not be able to tell you that.
Okay, so there is, and I mean, it is what it is, obviously.
Just being honest and
No,
transparent.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, which, I'm not aware of that. So, how does your depth perception get impacted based on drive?
My doctors just say I don't really have depth perception. My mind adapts to shadows and whatnot. So I have a different form of depth perception. But that's all I'm aware of.
So is it fair to say then, as far as you're aware, your depth perception, if we're asking for locations, other than what's in the videos that you've seen, you would not be able to give a good opinion as to that. Is that a fair characterization?
That is fair.
And so we have to rely on the videos, at least as far as your situation goes and what you witnessed, to get the locations of the various individuals, meaning Mr. Ellis and the two officers.
In some ways, yes.
And by the way, and you did see two officers, right?
Just two, yes.
Right. And at the time you saw them, you were not sure of their races. I think you said one was white, you weren't sure about the other one, right?
Wasn't sure about the other, no.
And then later on, I think you got some information. Did you watch the McDowell video, by the way?
I saw it on actual live TV once, but I never took the time to actually search for it, look at it.
Somehow you became aware that there now were two white officers, right? Later on.
I believe rewatching my own video, I came to that conclusion.
Okay. But initially, as you were observing it and experiencing the event, you just were unaware of it. It wasn't clicking at that point.
Right.
Okay. And you were going to take a right on this street when you got up there, is that right?
Correct.
So when we talked about, right, I mentioned motivations. You've had Bible, well, he wasn't present at the defense interview, right?
I'm unsure.
Yeah.
Oh, the latest interview we had.
Well, I don't know the latest, but the one where I was present.
Yeah, he was not present.
Okay. But you wanted him there, right?
I'm indifferent.
Okay. Did you request of him to be there?
I don't recall.
Okay. And if we go to that interview, if you have it in front of you, which is exhibit number 839. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
And if you turn to page 12 of that interview.
Page 12?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And lines 1 through 12. Read that to yourself. You see where you indicated in an interview that he, meaning Bible, was present at the WSP interview, Washington State Patrol interview, and he was there for his own personal motive?
Are you referring to line 8 through 11?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What did you mean by that?
I know he had his own personal motive to help out the Ellis family. I know his motives weren't really aligned with mine.
Okay. And on page 14, on that same exhibit, if you go to page 14, you have that in front of you?
Yes.
And on lines 14 to 20, do you have that in front of you?
14 to 20?
Mm-hmm.
Reading them now.
I missed that last part.
I'm reading them now,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell me when you're done.
I'm done.
Right. And that was when I asked you earlier about whether you were being requested to do a second interview with the state, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to check at this point because in terms of where we're going, I think it was subject to a prior motion of eliminating. And
I'm not sure what that means, so I guess I'll excuse the jury with that discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse us. Please do not discuss that. Please be seated. I don't have 39, so I don't know if you can put it up on the screen for me.
Oh, the transcript?
Yeah, this whole way of doing business has been more awkward for me in this trial than I think in any trial I've ever had. Because
Artifacts on it?
it's not even a function of artifacts.
I'm not sure what Mr. Ruby's referring to, Your Honor, so, and I don't know.
I don't know. So can you guys put 839 on the screen for me? Then I can follow along with what's going on here.
And I don't know what the discussion's gonna be, so I don't know if Mr. Cowen should be in here or not.
I can just give the court a brief overview of what the objection is.
Is there some reason I can't get 839 on the screen? Okay. And does Mr. Cowden need to be excused?
I don't know.
Mr. Luce thinks so. He should be. Okay, Mr. Cowden, I don't think this will be more than a few minutes, but please step out outside the courtroom.
Thank you.
Don't go away, but just go outside the courtroom. Thank you.
Well, I've been There's so many.
He's got it.
And I would say, let we leave his deal alone. Well,
Leave it alone?
Yeah.
And we're on page 14, just for the record, so.
thank you.
And just for the, I was gonna reference line, just so we're all keyed in the same thing. Lines, 14 through 20 in that. I'm not sure if this was in the sections.
Okay, so what's the problem?
There's a prior motion by the state, motion to eliminate to exclude mention of the TPD internal investigation interview and whether witnesses, and I think it
Can't
applies,
hear you.
I think it applies specifically to Sarah McDowell, but it was with regard to whether she would cooperate or she was asked to cooperate with the IA and her refusal to be interviewed. I think that motion applies to this as well. I believe the court indicated that that's not relevant and shouldn't come in unless the door is opened, and I think the logic applies to Mr. Cowden as well. This line of question is going to go into the TPD internal affairs investigation.
No, it's not. My purpose for asking the question, Your Honor, is solely for this purpose. Is he sought advice from, it doesn't say the internal affairs interview, it just says an interview. And what I'm getting at is
You mean at line 5?
line, well, I have the line 14 to 20 in my notes, but where he says,
All right, well, line 12 refers to the internal affairs.
what's that?
Line 12, which is the question that lines 14 to 15 are answering, refers to internal affairs.
Okay. Well, that's not my intent. What I'm getting is the response is what I'm interested in. He told me he didn't have to do an interview or didn't have to. I did not do one because I don't get paid. That's all I'm getting into. That's all I'm asking about.
Well, you know, it's still going into the internal affairs interview. I mean,
Well, all right, well, here's at least a concern I have. It seems to me that, and you were asking the questions about a second interview, you were referring to a second Washington State Patrol interview. That's what it sounded like.
Initially, I was correct. You're right.
Right.
And I was mistaken.
And well,
An honest mistake. But yes, you're absolutely right.
all right, so now we've got, but it seems to me that the impression left is different because you've also indicated that after the Washington State Patrol interview that he apologized or said he was sorry or disappointed himself. I can't remember exactly the words with respect to what he said or whatever, and he mentioned this to Mr. Bible. And then he said, but you didn't go to our second interview with Washington State. And now you're talking about this without identifying what it is. It wasn't, in fact, that he turned down the State Patrol for an interview. He turned down an associated police agency, let's put it that way.
Yeah. And I apologize for, I didn't mean to mislead, I just was mistaken as to it. But the point of it is not, quite frankly, TPD. The issue for me, what I want to get in, obviously, is look at you're getting advice from the Bible. He told you didn't have to do it, regardless of who the interview's with. And secondly, you didn't do it because you weren't getting paid. That's all I want.
Well,
But if you think that opens the door, then I won't go there.
this could be sanitized in some way. I don't think that is necessarily a problem, but if we don't refer to it as a different police agency, then it seems to me you've left a different impression that may be unfair.
And I'm happy to characterize it like that.
Are you going to in any way suggest that the reason is not because he didn't get paid, but because he didn't want to cooperate with police authorities?
No.
That he was somehow concerned that an investigation by Tacoma Police Department, for instance, might be unfair?
again, obviously, when I first brought it up, I was thinking state patrol, so that wasn't on my radar, and nor is it on my radar at this point. It's simply to show, you know, he's in essence doing what the Bible tells him to do, and, you know, he says I didn't get paid, but yet he's willing to take time meeting with Bible and others when he is not, presumably, other than 3 legal points, not getting paid as well.
Your Honor, Mr. Fricke has created enough confusion here with all of the different, even if we refer to this interview as another law enforcement agency, it just gives a wrong impression. It's just unfair to the state and to the witness.
Oh, I don't know about that. Well, it seems to me that you could certainly ask him.
I'm happy to lead him through it.
Well, yeah, I think you can ask him that the Tacoma police wanted to interview you too. And I'm assuming that was, and according to this, it said it was after, according to his answer, it was after the Washington State Patrol interview. And if you say Tacoma Police Department, one, you correct the idea that it wasn't, the second interview wasn't requested by the State Patrol.
Yeah, I'll definitely correct that. And do you want me to say Tacoma Police Department as opposed to another agency?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to.
Okay.
The words internal affairs should stay out of it.
Let me hold on 1 second.
And so then the question is, why didn't you want to do another interview with TPD? Just that question at line 17.
And his statement was, I don't get paid.
Then he can say, what did you, when we asked you that, when that question was asked, wasn't this your answer?
Your Honor, it's not another interview. There was no first interview with TPD in the first place. And
No, I understand that. He's got to correct the fact that there was not a prior one. But it wasn't a second interview with the Washington State Patrol is what he's got to correct.
I think the point of this is that it's an investigation for internal affairs, that they're requesting this interview with the
Yeah,
witness.
but the question simply says, why didn't you want to do another interview with TPD?
But the subject of the motion to eliminate was with regard to the internal affairs act requesting an interview with
Yeah,
witnesses.
that question doesn't implicate the words internal affairs. I mean, this is still 2020, I guess.
Additional,
It's not 220,
Early 2021, I don't know.
22, I
Yeah.
believe, after they're doing the internal affairs investigation. So, I mean, it is significantly after the period of time where he's already done it. And I think, one distinction is
I don't care about that. I mean, he can defend himself if he wants to about that. But the point is, he didn't want to do the interview, and with law enforcement, and it was Tacoma Police Department. He knew that. I think he needs to clear up that it wasn't the State Patrol. But he didn't. But Tacoma Police Department reached out for an interview, and he didn't want to do it with them. So why not? The word "another" suggests that she'd already given an interview to TPD. I suppose there's that.
Yeah, I think the concern is that why not is that he is not legally obligated to do an interview for internal affairs as opposed to the criminal investigation. And so there's not really any way for him to go into why he didn't want to do it, in part, without opening up the internal affairs issue.
I don't see that. All he has to do is answer the same way he answered in the interview. He doesn't go into that at all. He didn't say, I didn't want to do it because I didn't like the police department or the internal affairs investigation. Doesn't say any of those things. That's why I was asking this question. Are you trying to get to this point that he didn't like Tacoma police, or he thought they were unfair or unreasonable or something in their investigation, or thought they would be? Because that might go to bias. I could see where he might go there. That's why it occurred to me. And also, I think in his in the other interview that was given, there was a reference that, or no, it was in email exchanges with Mr. Bible that suggested that because Washington State Patrol was aware of the social media, this wasn't mentioned to the jury, but I saw it, because it wasn't mentioned to the media, it maybe gave him greater confidence in the investigation. So I didn't know if somehow that he had no confidence in the TPD investigation is part of this, wherever they're going here. I don't know. That's why I asked the questions I asked about it. I know I look like a stump here, but I'm actually trying to think through. I'm trying to think through where all you guys are going.
Understood,
To
Your
try to
Honor.
anticipate the problems.
Yes, I'm not sure that we agree that that's what his text messages were about. But
Well,
I
I don't
understand
know.
what the court is saying. I just think that it is going to potentially lead into him saying something different unless counsel asks pretty precisely what he's going to say, or, leads him with respect to, why, just getting him to say that he wouldn't agree to do an interview with TPD and ask him that. But
All right.
I'm happy
just alerting the court to
But-
the issue.
I'm happy to lead them to, you didn't want to do an interview with TPD because you didn't get paid for it.
Well,
You didn't have the time.
of course, he also said he didn't have to, right?
Right, and
Right.
you didn't have to, that's fine.
And that was what you wanted to get into. And that's part of what you wanted to get
That's
into.
what
That
Bible
Mr.
told
Bible
him.
told him he didn't have to. Well, I would say be careful, but I think you can refer to Tacoma Police Department. I do think you need to correct the misimpression about about a second Washington State Patrol interview.
I totally clear that up and told him I misspoke.
Okay,
That'd be the very first thing I said.
good.
So,
Can I make a comment?
Sometimes it concerns me when you stand up, Mr.
I know. Well, believe it or not, I share in the state's concerns a bit about this internal affairs stuff because it was subject to prior motions in limine. So, there's also a motion to advise the witnesses of prior motions in limine. So maybe it makes sense that we mention to Mr. Cowden that he not mention the internal affairs. That it was an internal affairs investigation, had to do with internal affairs. So we just stay away from it.
Any comment about that, Mr. Fricke? You want us to advise Mr. Cowden that he shouldn't mention it was the TPD investigation was for internal affairs?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I think, you want me to mention it to him or the state? You mean not listen to me?
Well, this is why I get concerned when Mr. Conrad stands up. Now I got to do something. So Mr. Conrad says, I'm concerned, I think we should give Mr. Cowden a heads up before the jury gets here that we're going to be asking about the TPD investigation, but to stay away from the words internal affairs. That's what I'm understanding him to want to do. And my question to you is, what's your reaction to that?
I think you should, that's perfect.
State have an opinion about that?
State will inform the witness.
What's that?
State will inform the witness. State will inform the witness to stay away.
I was going to say, but we just have to bring him in here. I can tell him that, then we can have the jury come in.
That's
Okay? Great. Ms. Nicolavo, please. Thank you. Mr. Cowden, please come on back. Thank you. Appreciate your patience with us. Now, I wanted to let you know that we're going to go back to this topic about what was said in this interview to the defense attorneys in December of 2022. And with respect to this one page, actually, you don't have it. I've given it to me, so I can see what was being asked of you. So there on pages 14, I think. And there's a reference there to a request by the Tacoma Police Department for an interview. And so that's what you're going to be asked about. We don't want you to refer to the Tacoma Police Department interviews as an internal affairs investigation in your answers to the questions.
Okay.
But certainly the idea was that it was the Tacoma Police Department requesting the interview is going to be mentioned,
Of course.
okay? So don't be surprised by that. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. So, can we have the jury now? Okay, thank you.
You need water?
I have some. Thank you.
Yeah, he brought his own water bottle.
Oh, you did?
No.
He might have been a Boy Scout at one time because he's prepared.
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not an Eagle Scout?
Oh, no. Definitely not prepared.
My father was an Eagle Scout. My father was, yeah.
Huge deal. I don't know if it still is, but I know back in the day.
Well, yeah. That's what you do. Well, in so many ways, I never measured up to him. Let's just, and that was just one more. He was a brilliant guy. Just,
I'm sorry, is it what?
he was a brilliant guy, just a great guy.
Just to be clear, Your Honor, were you trying to refer to me not getting the TPD confused with internal affairs?
No, just don't mention the words internal affairs and we're good.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you about not doing the Tacoma Police Department interview.
Okay. Appreciate the clarity, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Please be seated. I don't know what the beeping is about.
You ready?
Hopefully it'll stop.
Do the beeping?
I think we're done, whatever that was. So go ahead, Mr. Fricky, whenever you're ready. I don't know. Do we know what that's from? Oh, you know what it might be? Do you guys remember last week I told you that there was going to be an earthquake deal on, well, this is Wednesday, that's tomorrow. Because it's supposed to be at 10:19 tomorrow morning. So I don't know. So I guess I thought maybe it was that. I don't know what it is. Anyway, I would say take your chances that it's going to stop. And proceed when you're ready, Mr. Fricky.
Okay, I'll try.
I think it has to do with the oxygen
Oh,
signal, the oxygen canister.
Oh, for one of the
One of the people in the gallery.
observers. Is everything okay there? Do we need any aid?
good. Thank you.
Are we? Okay, sounds like we're good now. Go ahead, Mr. Fricky.
Mr. Cowen, I apologize. I misled you earlier. I'd indicated if the State Patrol had sought to do a second interview, and I kind of confused you. And I apologize for that. But what I meant to say is there was a time you were contacted by the Tacoma Police Department who wanted to do an interview, correct?
Correct.
And you consulted with Mr. Bible at that time, right?
Yes.
And you ended up not doing that interview.
Yes.
Can you please re-ask your question before this one?
I'm not, you ended up not doing that interview, correct?
Correct.
And you did it after, you did not do it, number one, because as you indicated, you didn't have time and you didn't get paid to do it, right?
I felt like the 3 interviews I did was enough.
Okay, that's fine. And then secondly, Mr. Bible informed you that you did not have to do it, correct?
Yes, that's why I reached out to him.
Okay. And that's part of your contacts with him throughout this process, I guess I'll call it.
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated as such. Now, if we can pull up Exhibit 150. And this was admitted yesterday. And it was just unclear. I don't know if we can zoom in on that a little bit. Are you able to do that? You have that in front of you, Mr. Cowden?
Yes.
And I think you indicated yesterday, you came up Ainsworth, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you came from Domino's, where you were working at the time, is that right? Or from a delivery going back?
I was going from a delivery back to the Domino's
Right.
location.
And how far were you driving up Ainsworth?
I remember driving all the way down from, I believe it's South 104th or South 12th Street. It was the very bottom of the street before the highway.
Okay, and do you know how far that is, distance-wise?
Accurately, no.
Okay, and you have a guesstimate?
About 2-3 miles.
2 or 3 miles, okay. And is it a straight shot?
Straight shot.
Okay. And you were going down there, and I think yesterday you indicated where you were located when you first saw the police vehicle and Mr. Ellis. Remember that?
Yes.
And I think you had it down a ways as you're approaching the intersection, like a block away or maybe 3/4 of a block. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Can you point that out one more time for the jury, if I may
Yeah.
request, Your Honor?
I remember it being in between the blocks. It'd be around right here, 3/4.
So, if I use my pen, and are we able to do a drawing on that? You don't have the ability. So if I, we're taking over, I think. Oh, so they're going to do it another one, is red circles. So if you would point out to him where you,
Yeah, it's right there.
right before the line with the turn arrows there.
Yeah, around that area.
Okay, and that's when you, just to be clear, when you first noticed the police cruiser, which is my characterization, in Mr. Ellis.
I'm not sure that's the accurate spot, but from what I recall, I do remember seeing something happen before I reached the actual
Right.
stop.
But that's the location as you stand here today and yesterday, the best of your recollection as to where you were.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you. And I'll probably have that marked as 158. And again, that puts you just prior or right on the edge of where the turn signal white arrows are located. Fair to say?
Fair to say.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you, to your recollection, did those white arrows exist back in 20?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
But you still have the location there.
Just, yeah, from my brief recollection.
And so, obviously, you had to drive a ways before you were going to stop.
Right.
And you recall in that interview that you still have in front of you, I believe, which again is the defense interview, and it's exhibit number, excuse me, 839.
Yes.
Indicating that you didn't see Mr. Ellis, until you were basically coming to a stop. Recall that?
I don't recall it, but
If you can, you need to refresh your recollection?
I'd love to. If you could tell me what page.
I will. Page 30,
Thank you.
lines 22 to 25. And you're doing that, as you earlier indicated, you came to a stop at the stop line there, the line going across your lane of travel, right?
Correct.
Okay. You have that in front of you?
You said page 30?
Page 30, lines 22 through 25, so you'd be towards the bottom of the page.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
Does that refresh your recollection as to when you first saw Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
And that indicates when you were almost at a stop, correct?
Yes.
And also, if you back up a couple pages to page 28, first of all, you got that for you?
Yes, sir.
In lines 10 through 12. You indicate when you pulled up to the light, you actually had a green light when you pulled up to the light, correct?
Yes.
And you said that at that interview, obviously. And if you go to page 29, the next page, you look at lines 6 through 14.
Yeah.
And again, you reiterated that you had the green light, right?
Yes.
Wasn't yellow, right?
Guess not.
Wasn't
Yeah.
red, at least based on what you said in those interviews earlier, correct?
In this interview, yes.
And certainly, if you have a green light, if the lights are working properly, the officers would have had a red light, correct?
Correct.
And you, as you came up Ainsworth, were going to turn right, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't have a vision of whether there were any vehicles behind that police cruiser, is that correct?
Not until. Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, let me rephrase it. When you first came up there to that stop line, and when you stopped, whatever color the light was, you did not see a vehicle or two vehicles behind the police vehicle.
Not the ones that were behind the police vehicle, no.
Okay. Did you see vehicles to your left?
No.
When, so, just so we're clear, the only vehicle you saw then was what later on becomes apparent is the police vehicle, where the officers got out. Is that fair to say?
At that time, yes.
Okay. And later on, in your video that you watched earlier, you saw a couple vehicles drive by.
Yes.
Remember that? At the time, did you know who those vehicles were?
No.
Do you know now?
Briefly.
Your understanding, one of them was McDowell?
Yes. I'm not sure about the other ones.
Okay. All right. And so when you came up to Ainsworth, you were driving on that street for 2 to 3 miles? Is that, assuming that's the...
It's fair to say.
Okay. And you're saying during that whole time you never saw a vehicle at all, that 2 to 3 miles?
Not in front or behind me. I did see one or two at the actual intersection of South 96 and Ainsworth passing, but not in front or behind me.
And in front and behind you mean driving in the same direction as you?
Exactly, my lane of travel.
In that 2 to 3 miles, as you were driving up there, whenever you left your delivery, do you remember one way or another if you saw any vehicles coming opposite direction down that way?
As I was leaving?
Well, my understanding is you did a delivery.
Yes.
I assume it's pizza, but whatever.
Right.
You did a delivery. You were going back to Domino's.
Right.
You're driving on Ainsworth for 2 to 3 miles approximately. And you didn't see a car in front of you that whole distance.
Correct.
Going the same direction. When you look in your rearview mirror, you didn't see anyone behind you going the same direction.
Correct.
During that 2 to 3 miles, I'm asking you, do you recall if someone in their lane of travel was going past you the opposite direction at any time during that 2 to 3 miles, if you recall?
I do not recall.
Okay. So it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah. And so, but what you do remember, other than, again, the police vehicle, when you got there was the McDowell vehicle that drove by.
Yes.
And there were a couple other ones that would have been on to your left. Is that right?
I don't remember any vehicles on my left.
Okay. Now, you're sure you saw Manny walking on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. And you, I think your testimony was the police car was very on the edge of their lane of travel. Is that right?
By the edge, do you mean the curb? Yes. Yes.
Exactly. And I mean, you would agree if they were in the middle of their lane if he's on the sidewalk, that door is not going to be able to hit him.
Correct.
And you think it was your perception that the door did hit him
Yes.
while he was on the sidewalk.
That's what I perceived just from the door opening and him getting lower in my vision.
Now, you indicated during these interviews that the officers, the car, slowly pulled up in front of you. Do you recall that?
Yes. Until they came to a stop in the intersection.
Okay. When you said they pulled up in front of him, is he in the street?
Could you refer to when I said that?
Yeah, if you could, in the same exhibit, same interview, if you would refer to page 32. 32
Yes, sir.
and lines 18 to 21. See that?
Yes.
You see where the question was asked and you indicated where the officer slowly pulled up in front of him and were already there in his path of him walking.
Yes.
And so where was he walking?
He was on the sidewalk.
Okay.
When I said in the path of him walking, I simply meant ahead of his path, but not quite intervening or intercepting his path of travel.
Okay. And then you indicated if there was a bike lane, they would have been parked in the bike lane, correct?
Yes.
You couldn't see Mr. Ellis's expression.
No.
Correct. In fact, you couldn't see the officer's expressions at that time.
No.
You didn't see them put their overhead lights on, right?
No.
And do you recall the overhead lights being on?
I didn't recall.
Yeah. And you indicated initially you thought the cops were there just kind of to scout out the area.
Yeah, responding to a call, doing their job.
Are you aware of that neighborhood?
Of course.
Okay. Are you aware of there being, in your opinion, is it a high crime area?
Yes.
Okay. Is that what you're referring to? Responding to a call, responding to a call or scouting out the area?
Yes.
Okay. And again, are you saying today you don't recall him standing when you're in front of the vehicle?
Who?
Mr. Ellis.
I don't recall right now.
You go to page 38 of that interview, same exhibit. And you look at lines 1 to 3.
Page number, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, 38.
Yeah, you said it, I just didn't catch it.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Got that?
Yes.
In lines 1 through 3, starting there. You said the cops got out of the car basically at the same time, right?
Yes, passenger first, followed by the driver soon after.
And that's when the physical altercation began, right?
Yes.
In front of the cop car. Okay. And if you look at lines 7 through 8 there, you see that?
Yes.
How was Manny positioned at that moment when that altercation started?
So I was asked, was he standing at that point, and I replied yes.
Okay. On his feet, obviously, if he's standing, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he's in front of the cop car. And that's where you position the cop car in the middle of the intersection, right?
Right.
And then you indicated again, you don't know how he went to the ground, if he slipped or was forced, right?
Right.
And that's certainly then, the best of your recollection as to what happened, right?
Yes.
And obviously, you're a little, my word, hazy today as to what actually happened. Is that fair to say?
More than I was at the interview, yes.
Okay. And it's also fair to say, during these interviews, you never saw any physical contact between Mr. Ellis and the officers until they were in front of the car.
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated on page 39, line 25, that to be the situation during that same interview. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's still true today, correct?
Yes.
And just so we're clear, which direction was, in your opinion, Mr. Ellis walking?
From the east to the west.
And that would be, I'm gonna have you point out just so we're on the same page.
Yeah. So it would just be from this right-hand side, traveling this direction.
And he was going the opposite direction that had you made the turn originally, you would have been going the opposite way of him, right?
Right, I would be going this way. I came up northbound and then I took the right turn eventually. Manny was walking.
Can we get an arrow indicating which way?
And when it's your examination.
And at no time did you see the officers use their fists, right?
I don't recall.
And when what you did see, the way you described it as to what you were experiencing that night on March 3rd, is you saw the officers trying to restrain and arrest Manny, and that was pretty much it, right?
Sure, yes.
Well, I don't want, that's how you described it, right?
Yeah,
And that's when the brawl, as you described it, broke out, correct?
I feel like those might be reversed. I believe the brawl ensued and they were trying to detain him. My memory's very foggy on what happened before the video started, basically.
So you're not 100% sure what you're saying.
Exactly. When I said,
The video speaks for itself.
yes.
Well, I think that's the way you put the question, Mr. Fricke. You were saying they were trying to restrain and arrest Mr. Ellis, and that's when the brawl.
That is what I said.
But I thought what he was trying to say was that his description of the brawl, if you will, was the fact that they were trying to restrain and arrest this Mr. Ellis.
Do you know what occurred?
What I was trying to explain yesterday as well was that when the brawl happened and they were in the physical altercation, in the middle of that brawl that's when I brought up the fact that I saw the officers trying to restrain Manuel Ellis.
Okay. Well, if we go to that first interview, and that'd be exhibit number, and that's the Rue interview, whether it's September 22nd, 2020, or October 5th, but regardless, it's exhibit 836. Do you have that for you?
Yes.
If you look at page 4, do you have that in front of you?
I do now.
I'm sorry.
Exhibit 836, page 4. On it, yes.
Let me make sure. You go to line 19. See that?
Yes.
You indicated then, and that's your first interview with Detective Rue back in 2020. You indicated to him that when the police when you first pulled up, you thought it was just two officers to take a person down and make an arrest, correct?
Correct.
And that's what you thought at the time.
Correct.
And then, during the course of what you thought was going to be an arrest, you used melee, brawl, that's when it broke out.
Yes.
And Manny was trying to get away, and they were trying to arrest him. And restrain him and arrest him, correct?
I don't know how to put it in my own words.
Okay, that's fine. All right. I think that's all I have, Your Honor. If I just have a minute.
Okay?
I think that's all I have at the moment, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll take our morning recess for 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. Thank you. And
So Ms. White has said before that it helps her with her anxiety to have notes, and so she wrote this out unbeknownst to us and brought it to court, and we just made a photocopy and put a number on it and gave it to the defense. So,
Object to it being used to refresh your memory or further any other purpose, Your Honor.
Well, I guess we'll get that, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
All right, thank you. That's all I have right now.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bremer. All right, are we otherwise ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Actually, I have not marked that.
No, I understand that, but Ms. Bremner's got a number on it. The one person who should have a number on it is her, Mrs. Winnie.
Oh, I,
Stamp on it for Miss Winnie.
is it the number you have on your word or?
897. I just wanted to give it to you so quickly, I only handwrote it rather than scanning and getting the professional number put on.
Thank you.
Your Honor, one thing I didn't do is move for the admission
150A.
150A, which gives. No, well, whatever the subsection is.
Well, you called it 150A at the time. Anyway, so you want to do that before we turn the question over to defendant number 2?
Yes, or if Ms. Arvin wants to do it, that's fine too. Not everyone else. I don't remember exactly. Okay, I'll move with it.
All right, well, we'll go back to you when the jury comes in. And Mr. Arbins, you're going to be doing the questioning here? Okay, thank you. All right, let's have the jury. And Mr. Cowden, you can come on back. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Everyone, please be seated. Mr. Fricke.
Yes, Your Honor, before Mr. Arvin takes off here, I neglected to move the admission to 150A. That was put in evidence.
Any objection by any of the other defendants? State? 150A is admitted.
Mr. Cowen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good morning, I guess. We've met before, do you recall that?
Briefly, yes.
Yes, one of the defense, or one of the only defense interview.
Yes.
So I have to admit, listening to your testimony yesterday and this morning, I was a bit confused because I found a number of the answers that you've given here in this trial to be quite a bit different than things you told us or that you said in previous interviews. Do you understand that?
Of course.
And obviously you understand this is a serious case.
Your
that-
Honor, I have to object to this.
You want a question, you want a question, Mr. Liu?
Yes, Your Honor, I want a question.
Let's have a question then, Mr. Arbenz, I agree.
Mr. Cowen, you understand this is a murder case, correct?
Yes.
That's, okay, he understands.
It's a question.
It was a question. Let's get to the point.
And you are under oath, you understand that, correct?
Mr. Arbenz,
Yes.
he's been sworn in.
But there's, like I said, Your Honor, there's a number of discrepancies.
Okay,
Okay, fair enough. All right, so, Mr. Cowden,
Your Honor, I would object and move to strike that last comment by Mr. Evans.
the jury recognizes, I think, that the questions are not evidence, only the answers are, although the answers and the questions, the answers are explained by the questions to some extent. We don't have a question yet, so jury should disregard comments by counsel.
Mr. Cowden, and Sean, could you pull up Exhibit 151E, please? And when that comes up, you'll see that this was, well, take a look at it, Mr. Cowden, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And that was a picture that you were shown yesterday by, I believe it was Mr. Liu, correct?
Yes.
And it was, I think, one of the first things that you guys talked about, right?
Yes.
Okay, and he asked you to circle where the police vehicle was when it encountered Mr. Ellis, correct?
Correct.
And could you stand up and point to us where you indicated that? And there's a pointer that I would ask that you use now.
Where's the pointer?
I think the judge has it or had it.
I tucked it right next to the seat. Looks like a pool cue.
Next to the seat?
Kind of in the little crack there.
Oh, down here?
Yes.
Is that it? Very good.
Gotcha. Thank you. Can you repeat the question?
Sure, you bet. So yesterday, you indicated where the police vehicle was when it encountered Mr. Ellis, according to what you saw, correct?
Yes,
And where was that? Can you point to that?
it would be this circle right here.
Okay, so the circle that's kind of out in the middle of the intersection, fair to say?
Fair to say?
Okay, and then you indicated where Mr. Ellis was when you first saw him, right?
Yes,
So
it
where,
would be
go ahead.
this circle right here.
Okay, all right, great. You can have it, and then the other circle on the bottom, that's where your vehicle was, correct?
Correct.
All right, cool, thank you. You can have a seat. And Sean, could you pull up Exhibit 19, please? And if you, it's the video, and if you could stop it at the 5-second mark. And Mr. Cowden, this is your video that I'm going to show you. Exhibit 19. You could play it to 5 seconds, please. Okay, so Mr. Cowan, just for the record, this is your video, right?
Correct.
All right, and you filmed it after the police vehicle had stopped, correct? You started filming,
Correct.
all right? And at some point, both officers jumped out of the vehicle, right?
Yes.
Okay, and do you see where the police vehicle is in your video?
Yes.
All right, and can you see the line, what they call I think it's the cross of the bar line there, so where the police vehicle is?
I can't tell if that's the reflection of the lights off the street or a line. I do
Okay.
see a glimpse of something.
Would watching the entire video again help orient you as it relates to where the police vehicle was?
Absolutely.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and play again, and please pay close attention, all right? pause it now. Now, could you, I'm sorry, Sean, but could you go back to Exhibit 151E? And Mr. Cowden, having refreshed your recollection with your video, is 151E accurate?
No,
Okay, tell us why it's not accurate.
because the vehicle was further back into the street towards the east.
Okay, and so why don't you go ahead and use the pointer if you don't mind, and show the jury where the vehicle was. Okay, and you've got it, if I understand correctly, you've got it in the lane, or do you have it in the bike lane?
Just in that general area.
Okay, all right, and perhaps we can have a new circle added? Mr. Cowden, does that look accurate as to where you placed the police vehicle?
Sure.
Sure, or yes?
For 3 years ago, and just the video, from what I know, yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And so let's, if we can, and I apologize, I think it would be 150B. Does that sound like a good exhibit number?
Well, this is probably more like 151F.
Correct, that's what I am looking
All
at
right,
now.
fair enough. Your Honor, I would at this time move to admit exhibit 151F.
No objection, Your Honor.
151F is admitted.
All right, Mr. Cowden, go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. And just so we're clear, that's quite a bit different than what you testified on direct examination yesterday, correct?
Correct.
Now, one of the things that you testified to yesterday on direct was that you recalled where you had delivered the pizza, the address of the house that you delivered the pizza to.
Not,
Testifying to that?
yes, not quite the address, but I know the general location. I remember the apartments I delivered to.
Okay, so you were doing your job at Domino's, you delivered a pizza, and it was upon returning to the store that you came to this situation, correct?
On my route back to the store, yes.
All right. And you remember where you delivered the pizza?
The general area, yes.
Okay, what did you tell us yesterday?
A lot of things.
Understood, but where did you deliver the pizza?
To a customer's house. I'm not sure the area. I could show you on a map. It's just an apartment complex down south.
Do you remember telling me in the defense interview that you had absolutely no idea where you delivered that pizza?
I don't recall, no.
Okay, if I showed you it, would that refresh your recollection?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you could look, please, at Exhibit 839, if you have that.
Yes.
Okay, if you could open that, page 61. It's down at the bottom, sorry about line 24. You see that?
24? Yes.
And then you flip on to the next page. You see that?
Yes.
All right. So in this interview, you were asked if you recalled where you delivered that pizza to, correct?
Yes.
And your answer was, no, I have no idea, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what has changed between this interview and now? How do you remember the address?
Just being familiar with the routes. I was talking to some old Domino's employees, and I just know that we only took that Ainsworth southbound route if we were going to apartments in the general area.
Okay, and did you have those discussions to prepare for your testimony today?
No.
Okay, so it just came back to you,
It was just camaraderie, yes.
camaraderie with the
Old employees.
former colleagues.
Yes.
Okay, and this wasn't coaching by the state?
No.
It wasn't coaching by Mr. Bible?
No.
There's nobody else that's trying to influence your testimony?
No, sir.
Now, you told us yesterday that when you arrived at the intersection, that there were already two vehicles behind the police vehicle. Do you remember that?
When I arrived there, yes.
And you told us that yesterday in your sworn testimony,
Yes.
right? And previously, when the defense asked you that question, do you remember saying, no, there was nobody there?
I believe so, yes.
You do remember telling us that?
I would like to, look at it again and get the right line of questioning and the answers.
If you believe you told us that, is there any reason you would have told us something different then than what you're telling us here in court?
The line of questioning, how the question was phrased.
Okay, the phrasing of the question.
Yes. From what I'm seeing, I never saw cars passing by as I was approaching. I did from a long distance away, but when I arrived, there was no cars. And when I started recording is when Sarah and the other vehicle arrived and passed by.
Okay, because I understood your testimony yesterday to be that when you arrived, that, as you described, Sarah and Keon were already there.
Okay.
Is that what you testified to yesterday?
If that's what's on record, yes.
Well, I'm asking
Yeah.
you, do you remember testifying to that yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, so you told us that when you arrived, those two vehicles were already on the scene behind the police vehicle, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that is different than what you previously told us, right?
Yes.
And why is that?
Just hazy memory. I don't have a concrete answer for you. I simply don't recall.
Okay. You bet. You bet. Now, one of the things you said yesterday was that Mr. Ellis was walking east to west and that he appeared to you to be listening to music and enjoying nature.
That was just a way of describing how he was walking.
Okay. We're talking about 96 and Ainsworth.
Yes.
Does anybody at 11 o'clock at night walk on 96 and Ainsworth enjoying nature?
A lot of people like to walk slowly on that road.
Okay. Was he listening to music?
No.
Okay. So, you believe the people who are walking slowly on 96 and Ainsworth are enjoying nature?
I was just expressing the way he was walking. It was a slow pace, as if you were hiking in nature. That's what I was trying to describe yesterday.
Okay. Fair enough. Now, you described, so you actually posted this video on social media, correct?
Correct.
And do you remember what you said about the video in the comment section?
No.
You remember saying, when you posted it, I work in the ghetto?
No.
You
But,
don't remember saying that?
but I'm sure it's something I would have said.
That's something you would have
Sorry,
said?
I didn't hear you.
I'm sure it's something I would have said.
All right, so do you want me to refresh your recollection and show you that you said it, or you just want to tell us that you said, I work in the ghetto when you were describing this video?
Yeah, I'm sure I said it, yeah.
Okay, you sure you said it? All right, so do you want to retract the statement that it looked like he was just walking in nature?
No.
Okay, so he was in the ghetto, according to you,
Yeah.
but he was walking like he was in nature.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember being asked about 96 and Ainsworth in particular and describing it as a very bad part of town?
Yes.
And you described there being a lot of homeless encampments nearby, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But given all that, still looked like he was just walking in nature.
It was just you guys were asking me about the pace of his walking. I was just trying to describe it. He wasn't jogging. He wasn't preparing for a marathon. He was just walking as if he was just on a hike.
So now your testimony, either, I think it was yesterday afternoon, but also this morning, is that Mr. Ellis did not get hit by the passenger side door of the vehicle. Is that accurate?
I did not. I can't give you a clear answer on that.
Okay, and that's, of course, different than what you told us in previous interview, correct?
Yes. As time changes, I just simply don't recall.
So previously you told us that definitively you saw him get hit by the door.
Yes.
Okay, and now that's different.
Yes.
Okay. And you told us that he was on the sidewalk, but you've seen pictures that show that in all likelihood there's no way a door can hit the sidewalk because where the police vehicle ended up and the sidewalk is about 15 feet apart, correct?
I don't recall being shown like the distance between the curb or being explained any of that.
Okay, all right, I'll get to that. Now, you also told us today that your vision is good, right?
Correct.
All right. But then you did later say that your depth perception might be affected to some degree, Fair enough?
Fair enough.
All right. Now, could you, let's see, will you take a look at Exhibit 839, page 64?
I'm there.
And take a look at that and tell us if you recall telling the defense that your vision is actually poor.
Yes, I did mention my bad vision, but not because of my actual sight of my one eye, but simply because I lack an entire POV, an entire vision field, if you can say that.
Okay, and that was actually in response to the question about the two other vehicles, the McDowell and Lowry vehicle, correct?
Right.
And you told us that they weren't there, correct?
They pulled into view as I arrived, or when I
Okay,
was
and you were
stopped.
describing your bad vision in that context, right? That you have a smaller field of vision than,
Yes.
than others. Okay, all right, fair enough. Sean, could you pull up Exhibit 154, please? All right, so just to be clear, Mr. Lowry, go ahead and take a look at that. It just disappeared. Yeah. Oh, okay. We take a look at Exhibit 154.
Yes.
All right, and what does that look like to you?
Looks like a police car in the road.
Does it look like the vehicle is in the place that it was in your video?
That's hard to tell for me, but from
Trying to
yes,
tell?
yeah, it's unable. Yes, it's in the same spot as in my video.
Okay, does it appear to accurately reflect the situation that you observed on March 3rd, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I move to admit that exhibit and publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
No objection.
154 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Cowen, take a look at that picture and observe where the vehicle is with, you know, the stopping line and also the lane line. You see that?
Yes.
All right, and actually the police car actually looks like it's almost on that lane line, correct?
Yes, the white line that's appearing before us, closer to the camera than is the vehicle, right?
Right, and there's another lane to the left of the police vehicle, correct? For that same direction?
The turn lane, yes.
Okay, and you've driven this road a number of times?
Yes.
Right? Okay, all right. And that was where the car was when it stopped?
Yes.
Okay. And could you pull up 155, Sean, please? Okay, could you show the witness? Now, Mr. Cowden, can you take a look at that picture and tell us if that picture appears to accurately represent where the police vehicle was on March 3rd of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. I would move to admit and publish that exhibit, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor. Okay.
Did you say no objection?
Yeah, I said no objection.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Mr. Lou?
The only reservation I have is Mr. Cowen would not have seen the scene in this vehicle.
Is that an objection?
No objection.
Well, that was great. Glad I asked that question. Well, Exhibit 155 is admitted then.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Cowden, go ahead and take a look at exhibit 155. And I'm mostly just asking about the position of the vehicle. Based on what you can tell, it appears that that vehicle is quite a ways from the curb, correct?
Yes.
All right, and guesstimating 10 feet, does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and it's hard to tell from this picture, but can you actually see where the sidewalk is?
Yes.
It's actually on the other side of the trash cans, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's probably another 3 or 4 feet from the road, fair to say?
Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Ellis, if he was walking on the sidewalk, was probably 15 feet from the police vehicle, and I'm estimating.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say? Okay, all right.
Definitely fair to say.
All right, I appreciate that. Sean, could you pull up 523? That's not admitted. Have a witness take a look at it. Take a look at this view, and I'll represent to you this is a scan of the scene. Does that look familiar to you in any way?
Yes, the intersection.
Okay, so you observe that as the intersection, correct?
Yes.
And the placement of the police vehicle, is that accurate as to your memory of being a witness there that night?
Yes.
Okay, and did I ask about the police vehicle or your vehicle?
Police vehicle.
Okay, the police vehicle. So the police vehicle is accurate. What about your vehicle?
I pulled up more to the white line. If not, I think my front wheels were past the white line.
But at some point, your vehicle was in that position.
Yes, rolling up to the stop.
Okay, you're rolling up. All right. And there's a line between your vehicle and the front of the police vehicle. Do you see that?
Yes.
And does that appear to be accurate in terms of what your line of sight would have been to the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to move to admit states 523.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
Did you say no objection, Mr.
No
Lee?
objection.
Okay, 523 is admitted.
And if you publish, please. Thank you. So, Mr. Cowan, I'll represent to you, this is what we call Faro scan. And there was a previous witness that discussed it. But what that witness told us was there's a line between, with what people can see. Does that make sense?
Yes.
To you? Okay. And according to this picture, it wouldn't probably be until about, say, 5 to 10 feet from the stopping line for you that you would actually be able to see the front of the police car. Does that look right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've given us a lot of testimony about all that you saw as you drove up to the intersection. Now knowing where the police car actually was because of your video, and based on this exhibit that's been admitted, 523, do you want to change your testimony about what you saw as you approached that intersection?
No, I do remember seeing the vehicle from a distance away. I'm not sure if it's because that green shrub there where the line is might be transparent in a way, but I do remember seeing something as I approached the light.
Okay, but you could have seen something, but only in the last few feet, correct?
Yes.
All right, so previously you told us you saw, I think yesterday you said you saw as far back as, I believe it was 100, or, I have it right here, that it was 97th Street. Well, let's go ahead and do this. Is 2542 admitted? No? All right, could you show that to the witness, please? Do we have that marked in a physical copy? I believe we sent it somewhere. I've got my copy, but I can use this. Good, next one. Okay. We can. Up there. Yep, there it is.
Is this duplicative of another exhibit we have?
Sorry?
Is this duplicative of another exhibit we have?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's not what I saw a moment ago. Okay, go ahead.
Too much going on, I can't. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do that. Mr. Cowden, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 2542. You can take a look at that real quick.
She was able to pop it up.
Oh, is that? Okay. I'll keep that one. And do you recognize that?
Yeah.
Do you see it on there? I'll steal this one back from you.
Perfect.
Thank you. You recognize that?
Yes, that would be my point of view coming up to the intersection.
Okay. And that accurately reflects what it's like to drive on Ainsworth heading north towards 96?
Yes.
And that's a road you've taken a number of times, correct?
Yes.
And took on this night in question on March 3rd, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move to admit Exhibit 2542.
I have no objection.
No objection, yes.
I could want that, Your Honor.
Sure.
Mr. Cowden, you wouldn't know when this was taken, right?
No.
Keep your voice up, Mr. Luke.
Thank you.
Mr. Cowden, you would know when this was taken, right?
No.
Does it accurately reflect what you saw that day?
No.
And why not?
The time of day, as well as the season.
All right. Your Honor, I would object.
I can represent the court. This is just
We know the time of day is different because it's daylight.
Yeah.
How does the season affect what you would have been able to see?
Even though it was March, I don't remember being so much green, but it might just be because it's in the daylight as well.
In other words, you don't know whether the green was there and looked like this because, in fact, it was dark out.
Yeah.
So do you think there's anything, I guess this would be, since you're approaching south to north, is there any obstruction, if any, to your view would have been along the right-hand side of the road here, right?
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that, Your Honor?
Sure. Since you're proceeding from the south to the north, you're northbound on Ainsworth,
Yes.
approaching 96. We all agree that that's what this shows.
Yes.
Any obstruction with respect to vegetation would be on the right as we look at this photograph, right?
Yes.
The right side of the road.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us in what way you think that the right side obstructions are different from what they were, if any, on the night in question?
It's not quite that, but the one thing I'm concerned about is I was in the left lane, but I only think those lanes split at that 97th Street South road.
And I think we see, for instance, that in this picture, that there is no lane divider, at least no solid lane divider here on Ainsworth. But we can see in the mid frame of the picture that there is a solid line, and it looks like a couple of painted turn indicators on the surface of the roadway, right?
Yes.
And I think your testimony was that your vehicle would have been close to the painted turn signal that we see here on the right-hand side, at least when you began to see things. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
So this is farther back than that,
Yes.
obviously because we can actually see the turn signal.
Yeah.
If you
And
were
that-
right on them, we probably couldn't see it.
I don't turn that early, Your Honor.
But you think you're actually in the left lane, not the right lane at this point, and we're changing lanes?
Yeah, I don't believe I turned into the right lane until I approached more. That's not out of memory or recollection. That's just out of my own driving habits.
Well, I'll admit 2542 for what it's worth.
Thank you.
The left hand,
I said for what it's worth.
oh, okay, all right.
We can publish that, please. Thank you. So, Mr. Cowan, please take a look at this. As you know, this is a picture from 97 moving north towards Ainsworth. You recognize that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and like I said, I'll represent to you, this is taken from Google Maps, okay, as a viewpoint. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Google Maps?
Yes.
So I'm laughing because I used to deliver pizzas, and Google Maps would have made it a lot easier in my day. So I'm sure it helps with what you do, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so from this picture, it's pretty hard to see what's going on in that intersection, correct?
Right.
Okay, and there's, as the judge mentioned, there's quite a bit more vegetation and shrubbery on the right side of the road than there is the left, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, and given that we've,
Well, that's not what I said. I don't know what kind of vegetation there is on the left side of the road. All I'm saying is, for purposes of his viewpoint, whatever vegetation on the left doesn't matter.
I agree, I apologize, Your Honor, I wasn't, I didn't word it very well, I apologize. So, Mr. Cowden, the right side is what I'm asking about.
Of course.
And I'm asking, of course, because of your previous testimony about the distinction between whether the police car was in the middle of the intersection or in the lane of travel, behind the stoplight line. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And as you're driving this way, if the police vehicle was back at the line, where you have now testified that it was, you really wouldn't be able to see it as you approach, correct?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Could you pull up 150A, please, Sean? That's been admitted, so we publish it in a second.
Is it 150?
150A, please.
You mean 151A?
No, I think it was 150A. It was just admitted. You don't have it?
Wait a minute, counsel, I have it, but it
I can,
has to be.
Just admitted it a bit ago.
158 was one,
that was, this was the one.
you made a marking on, I believe, for Mr. Frickin.
No, I'll just move on.
They should.
I don't need to get into it right now.
I think that's what they did mark.
It's okay. I'm gonna withdraw
Can you
it.
say- You don't want it there?
I'm gonna withdraw it.
Okay, I was gonna say, well, let me see that.
You pull it up.
This is what I was given.
Yeah, this is 150.
Right. I'm gonna move on for the moment. Sean, could you pull up 523 again? Actually, I'm gonna withdraw that as well. I'm going to move on officially. So, Mr. Cowden, as we talked about your testimony, you've given a number of interviews, and I'm not going to go through everything about all of them, except to say that in most of the interviews, this James Bible was present, correct?
Yes.
And you've been asked about that, And you've talked with Mr. Bible a number of times, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that he represents the Ellis family, correct?
Yes.
And you've actually talked with the Ellis family a number of times, right?
I believe just the sister Monet.
Just with Monet,
Yes.
okay. And you talked with Ms. McDowell. Sorry, thank you. You've talked with Ms. McDowell.
I gave her a brief greeting, yeah.
Okay. So you know a number of the people who are involved, at least at some level, in this situation. Fair to say?
Somewhat,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. And that's the reason I'm asking you some of these questions. Is
Of
what
course.
we can't have is any type of coaching or influence, and you understand that.
Of course.
Get to a question.
Okay, you got it. And like we talked about earlier, you've given the one defense interview, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in your texts with Mr. Bible, there's a few things I'd like to talk about, and that's Exhibit 2541. Could you pull that up? Do you see that?
No, nothing.
Okay. Do we have a hard copy for him?
2541?
Yes. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Cowen, if I may approach, Your Honor. Should have asked earlier, I apologize. This is Exhibit 2541, and take a look at that and tell me if you recognize it.
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of a series of text messages between you and Mr. Bible?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could flip to the third page, do you see a text that you sent to Mr. Bible on October 1st of 2020?
Yes.
And this is in reference to an interview that you were going to give related to this case?
Yes.
Okay. And did you say anything about, or did you ask Mr. Bible about the plan?
The only time I mentioned that was in the text you see before you on the October 1st. I said, let me know the plan and how I should prepare. Before that, I said, just letting you know, I got the 5th and 6th off of that month. When I said, let me know the plan.
Hold on. I'm not asking for everything. I'm asking
Yeah.
about the plan.
The plan was just to set the date for the interview.
So there wasn't a plan about what you were going to say?
No.
And if you could flip to the next page, I believe Mr. Frisbee asked about the October 5th, 2020 text, kind of at the top there.
Yes.
All right, and in that text, you're apologizing to Mr. Bible, correct?
Yes.
And what are you apologizing for?
For the amount of stuttering I did. How nervous I was during the interview.
Okay, but that's not exactly what you said.
Yes. Or you're correct. It's not exactly what I said.
All right, well, what did you say? I
said I apologize if I said anything disappointing.
Okay, so you said, I apologize if I did anything disappointing. What did you mean by that?
Just, I'm sorry for the way I stuttered, basically. That's really it. It was just the way I spoke. I took a lot of time. I know the interview went longer. And I was just worried that I wouldn't say what I said in the first interview.
Did Mr. Bible have expectations about what you would say?
Not at all.
Okay, I guess the word disappointing, I'm trying to understand why you would use that word.
Right. I'm not sure either. It was just a quick text I wanted to send out.
Was he someone that you wanted to impress?
No.
All right, and so if you could flip to the next page. On the February 26th exchange of 2021, Mr. Bible reaches out to you, it looks like. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you respond. What do you say in that response?
I said whichever you believe will help the case.
Okay, so in this text, you're telling Mr. Bible that you want to help his case. Is that fair to say?
No, just the case.
Okay.
As you can see in the text before, he said, do you want me to coordinate this, or do you want them to reach out to you directly? I didn't know which one would simply help the case proceed quicker.
And then, if you could flip to, I believe it's the 6th page, bear with me. The 7th page, please. And I can show you kind of where we're at. But I think it's the 7th page on the.
I don't have page numbers.
I know. So
Yeah.
Start at the beginning, go to 7. I don't have page numbers either.
What's the date?
It's the
The text.
May 27th text from Mr. Bible.
Gotcha.
And could you take a look at that text from him, the green one in the middle?
Yes.
Just tell me what you understood that text to mean.
He said, please call me ASAP. This is James Bible. The state will be announcing its decision today.
Okay, the state will be announcing its decision today. What did you understand that to mean?
Nothing at all, I'll be honest.
Okay, you didn't understand what that meant?
No.
And then on the last page, if you could flip to that. There's the bottom 3 texts are what I want to ask you about.
Sure thing.
The first one's from Mr. Bible reaching out to you. And what's he asking you in that?
He's asking, basically he's letting me know the defense attorneys for the officers would like to interview you. And they said, would you like for me and or the prosecutors to be present for any witness interview?
Okay, and what did you say?
I said I really don't want another interview. I've been called by the Attorney General's office 4 times since their last interview, and they're really just trying to pick my brain for holes.
Okay, all right. So you didn't want to do the defense interview, correct?
Yes.
All right.
I was actually confused at this moment. You can kind of get that from this context. He said the defense attorneys for the officers would like to interview you. I thought that the state was the defense in a way. I wasn't sure who was on whose side.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But either way, Mr. Bible offered to be present on your behalf, correct?
Yeah.
Did you and Mr. Bible have a lawyer-client relationship?
No.
Okay. But you've routinely reached out to him for help.
Free legal help. I like it.
So he was offering you free legal help? That's how you saw it?
I was asking at first, but then it seems like he reached out to me in this last page.
Okay. What other free legal help did he give you?
None at all.
None?
Just everything related to this case.
Everything related to it?
Yes. I mean, the only conversations Bible and I had together were about the case.
Okay. And after the text that you sent where you said, I don't really want to do another interview, Mr. Bible sent you a text that said his email address, and then he says, it was good talking to you. You see that?
Yes.
So after you said, I don't want to do a defense interview, you guys had a phone conversation?
I believe so, yes.
All right. And what did you guys talk about in that phone conversation?
I do not recall. I'll be honest.
Okay. You don't recall?
No.
Now, you have previously told us, and I appreciate this, I think you've told us today, that you do have some problems with memory. Fair to say?
Of course.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned it a number of times, and I believe that that's why you suggested that some of these things have evolved a bit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And there's also been some things that you've been pretty consistent on, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you did tell us today that when you posted the video on either Snapchat or on Reddit, you said, I live in the ghetto, right?
I don't know where this context was. When I said that, I don't know if it was a comment or a reply to a friend.
Okay, it was something you said in reference to the video.
In reference to it, yes.
Okay. And you remember hearing during the struggle with Mr. Ellis, the police saying a number of times, put your hands behind your back, correct?
Can you repeat that?
You remember hearing the police tell Mr. Ellis to put his hands behind his back. You remember telling us that?
I don't recall telling, no.
Okay, so do you deny that you told us that, or you just don't remember?
I just don't remember.
Do you remember hearing the police tell Mr. Ellis to put his hands behind his back?
No, I just, from what I recall at this moment, I just heard like orders being shouted out. I heard firm voices that were basically what I assume a cop having a man, you know, trying to get him in custody.
Trying to get him into custody?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Would you like me to refresh your recollection on whether you heard that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you grab Exhibit 837, I'll represent to you is an interview game with David Bible that was pretty and we have these little numbers called Bates numbers, and so I wrote down the Bates number, which is 37077.
You wanted me to get Exhibit 837 out, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
And looking specifically at lines 6 through 8. See that?
On just the first page?
So it's actually page 9 of that interview.
Perfect.
So take a look at page 9, and in particular, look at page or lines 6 through 8.
I see it.
You see that?
Yes.
So you told Mr. Bible that the police were telling Mr. Ellis to put his hands behind his back.
Yes.
Correct? And that you heard that.
Yes.
Okay. And you also told in another interview, and you've been consistent about this, which is why I'm asking. You remember that you saw Mr. Ellis get hit by the door, but that he wasn't knocked down by the door. Do you remember telling us that?
Briefly.
Okay.
Slightly.
So, and I can show you if you want, or if you remember, just tell us I remember.
Okay.
Do you remember, or do you want me to refresh your recollection?
A refresh would be
Okay,
appreciated.
fair enough. All right, so if you could go to Exhibit 839, which is the defense interview, at page 57. You see that?
Yes.
Page 57, and look at lines 5 through 8.
Yes.
And there you told us that Mr. Ellis didn't fall down when the door hit him, correct?
I said not instantly. No. Yes.
Okay. You said not instantly, and later on you described that he fell out in front of the police vehicle.
Yes.
What you remembered, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. And you also told us that although Mr. Ellis did end up on the ground, and that's, obviously in your video, that you don't remember how he ended up on the ground.
Not now, no.
You don't remember that?
No.
Okay, all right. And you were, like I say, again, these are things that you've been consistent about, which I appreciate. You actually told us that Manny might have slipped is how he ended up on the ground. You remember that?
There's possibilities for everything.
Okay, well, you could flip to Exhibit 839. Page 38. And lines 12 through 15, please. Take a look at that.
Yes.
And you said that you didn't see how he ended up on the ground, but he might have slipped.
Yes.
All right. And your interpretation of the incident in our interview was that the officers were simply trying to restrain Mr. Ellis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you've also been clear that you never saw Mr. Ellis with anything in his hands, correct?
Correct.
And you also have been clear that you never saw either officer punch Manny or use their fists, correct?
I only know what I have in the video. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
If the video, if it shows that, then that's that. But I don't know if it even shows that or not. I don't.
Well, the video, speaks for itself.
Right.
Right. I'm asking about your recollection of things that happened outside of the video.
Oh, then no, I have no recollection
Okay,
right there.
So you didn't see that happen.
No.
And you've been really clear about that you never saw really what happened at the beginning of the interaction between Mr. Ellis and police. Do you recall telling us that a number of times?
Yes.
Okay. And you've told us that you had just delivered a pizza, you were at work, right?
Right.
And that you were hurrying back to get another pizza for another delivery,
Right.
Sorry, you have to answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that you had the Google Maps on, was that on your phone?
Yeah.
Okay. And that you were also listening to music?
Yes.
And were you doing that on Apple Play or?
Spotify.
On Spotify?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that on your phone also?
Yes.
Okay. And that the light was green when you approached, right?
Right.
But that you saw the police car and you thought, well, I better not speed or do anything here because there's a police car ahead, right?
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
And you told us all a number of interviews that you never really saw what initiated the incident. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes.
Okay. If I read some quotes to you, please tell me that you said these things. I never really saw what initiated the incident.
Correct.
Mr. Cowden did not recall seeing the initial contact.
Correct.
Sound right? I mean, I didn't see much before I started recording.
Correct.
I don't remember how it all started.
Correct.
Okay. And you were actually driving, right? Like you were actually moving when the officers jumped out of the vehicle, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you weren't even sitting still at the line.
No, I was in drive and about to take the turn.
You were about to make the turn, right?
Yes.
Okay, you were moving. And you told us that you slammed on your brakes when you saw the passenger door open and then the driver's side door.
Yes.
To see what happened. Okay. Now, there was a specific moment in the defense interview when I started asking you some specific questions, and so I'm going to just...
This might be a good time to break in.
Okay. All right.
So we'll take our noon recess at this time. Please be back, everyone, by 1:15. Please do not discuss case among yourselves or with anyone else. Thank you very much.